wanna be in the know about how we put together our little show. If you like to hear the puppeteers play the characters that you cheer, so join us as we go below the frame.
On this episode of Below the Frame, I'm talking with Sesame Street Muppet performer John Kennedy. We'll talk about learning everything you can and putting it into your puppetry and how he just can't stop working. We're also going to learn about one of the things a puppeteer can't live without. So, no need to memorize your lines. It's time to go below the frame.
Go below the frame.
Welcome to Below the Frame. It's a podcast. It's about talking with people around the Muppets from Sesame Street and Disney. It's hosted by me. I'm Matt Vogel. And, hi. Not only do we talk with those Muppet Universe folks, we also talk about puppetry and what you need to do if you want to be a Muppet performer. Now, it is not a guarantee that following the advice given to you on this podcast will actually result in you being on Sesame Street or on the next thing the Muppets do. We can't make that kind of guarantee. There's simply no research to support it, but who knows? You know, if you work hard enough and you stay persistent, you just might find yourself working alongside people like myself or my guest today. And speaking of my guest, he is raring and ready to go, and I am ready to, and I know that you are. So, let's do it then. Let's go below the frame with John Kennedy. Joining me today is a puppeteer who's worked with Sesame Street. He's worked with the Muppets. He's worked at Disney World. He's worked on dinosaurs. He's worked on the Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss. He's worked on Dog City. He's worked for a bunch of others and for himself as well. He has written 2 books on puppetry: Puppet Mania, the world's most incredible puppet-making book ever. It says so on the cover. And Puppet Planet, the most amazing puppet-making book in the universe, and I have no reason to doubt that. Both of these books you can find online. He has an album of great music from his band, Johnny K Band, called Walk the Loop, that's available where you find music. And he has done so much, and he is always creating. And whenever I see him for work on Sesame Street, he's usually also working during every break or every opportunity on some other project that he's got going on as well. It is my pleasure to welcome the very talented, very creative, and very busy John Kennedy. John Kennedy, hello, welcome to Below the Frame.
Thank you, Mr. Matt Vogel. I'm on the radio.
You're right here with me, right here. Let's talk about where you came from. You're from Indiana, is that right?
That's right. I'm a Hoosier.
You are, and tell me a little bit about where you grew up.
Plainfield, Indiana. It pretty much was a plain field. There really was there really was nothing to do there. I remember when we got our first Marsh grocery store. We had a Kroger's, but we got a competing grocery store, and you just drive down the main drag there, and you could see it from a really far distance away because it was just a field, and there's a Marsh grocery store.
And was that a big day in your town?
It was. That was huge. And then we got our little community that grew up next to that. So a new housing community, and that was exciting. We'd ride our bikes through there and go, wow, they're building houses.
Tell me a little bit about your family growing up in Plainfield.
Well, my dad was a sports nut, and he loved to watch all kinds of sports, and I wasn't that excited about it. So while he would do sports or listen to sports on the TV, which he had to be there for, anything that was always a game, a big game. It's always a big game. It's
all kinds of sports, everything: football, baseball, basketball.
He wasn't excited about baseball, although he liked playing it. He didn't watch a lot of the baseball games, but football, that was huge, and definitely basketball, because he grew up in French Lick, Indiana, where Larry Bird is from. My mom did too, and that's where they met, and that's where they used to go to the high school there and watch Larry Bird play. They were older than him, so they heard about this hotshot basketball player, and they would drive back. It was a couple hours back to French Lick down to see the games at their old high school, and he didn't disappoint. He was really good.
And nothing ever happened to that guy anyway.
No,
right?
No, he just disappeared.
Never heard of again.
Nope. Number 33.
What kind of things did you do as a kid then? You weren't listening to sports, so what did you do?
Well, it's kind of funny. Even today, when I listen to sports, I get creative. So if I want to get something done, I turn on a football game, and I have no idea what's happening or who the teams are, but that is just in my brain that the sound of football on TV makes me want to make puppets.
It's a motivational tool for you.
It is, because my mind would just go like, well, I'm not watching that. What can I do? And then I get really creative.
So as a kid, then what did that mean you were creating?
Well, I would carve foam. I just had all ideas for puppets. When I asked my mom at age 3, will you make a puppet for me? And she said, I don't know how. I kind of just came up with it on my own.
You built your own first puppet at age 3?
Yeah, I stapled together green fabric to make a Kermit. Cardboard mouth and some fabric. My mom let me go into her little fabric bag. She had all these little scraps, and I would take those scraps and staple them together to make things. And that was the first thing. I want to do that character on Sesame Street, that Kermit guy.
So as a kid, what made you think, I want to build a puppet?
Oh, well, Jim Henson, really. I mean, Sesame Street, I saw that for the first time, and I didn't see the first season. I heard about it, and my neighbor, David Follis, he's my age, and he had the antenna that you could have attached to the back of your TV to pick up those channels. So I had to beg my parents to go buy that, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So he would screw it on the back of this giant TV that we had, and then you could get Sesame Street. It was an exciting day. I still remember.
So you watched Sesame Street, and you were making puppets, and then along came the Muppet Show. I'm going to guess that you were enamored of that as well.
Oh yeah, I saw it in the paper. It was on the front of, the Indianapolis Star, had a weekly, flyer inside of all the new TV shows. And the photo of the Muppet Show was on the cover of that. And I saved that. I was like, this is it. Because I'd seen, the specials that they had done, before that. And I knew about the Muppets, and what was it? Sax and Violence. That was one of their specials before. It was kind of
a pilot kind of for the Muppet Show, wasn't it?
I remember seeing that. And at the end, they panned down from the puppets, and you saw all the performers running around like crazy. And I was just like, I want to do that. I got to do that.
You knew at a young age, you were like, this is what I want to be. I want to be a puppeteer. I want to work with those guys.
Yeah. So first grade, the teacher was like, I want to talk to you about idols. Does anybody have an idol? Oh, Jim Henson. That was it. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And what was funny is, and I didn't even realize this, but my dad, he's a funny guy. He loved jokes. He loved telling jokes and funny stories. And he loved Stan Freberg. And so when I first started listening to records, he said, well, if you want to listen to a really good record, this is it. And he handed me a 45 of Banana Boat or Deo. And it was Stan Freberg, his spoof of the Harry Belafonte song. And I didn't know it, but Jim Henson used to do that stuff. He would on his first TV series, he would lip sync to all those old Stan Freberg records and others too.
This was in the 50s. This was Sam and Friends.
Yes. Yeah,
and Jim and Jane would lip sync to records, and some of the records were Stan Freberg records.
Right, some of them were, and so I had done the same thing in elementary school. I had brought in all my puppets, and I had all my friends in my class for the convocation, or I think it was a talent show. We did Shaboom, which is another really good Stan Freberg one. Awesome song where they stick old rags in their mouth, and they would just the characters that come out of the song, and they stop, and somebody has an encounter with another character, and they as I remember Jane Henson talking about how the Muppets spar in one documentary, and that's kind of what they did too. The characters in those Stan Freberg songs would spar with each other, someone's too loud, someone's too soft, man, you're stepping on my toes, or, I come through the window, he bashes through the window. So there's sound effects. So it was just exciting to listen to. And I still love listening to those albums. They're great.
Oh yeah, they're great. They're great. And it's fun to hear Jim's inspiration, some vocal inspiration from Stan Freberg. So when you were growing up and you were bringing puppets to school, did you do this all the way through high school?
I did, yeah. In my yearbooks, there's photos of me. I did this 10-foot tall puppet too that had a big PVC pipe stage all around him. I called him Mr. Spirit because I got college credit to have the Key Club, which was one group you could join in high school. And I was the president of Key Club, and I said, hey, all you guys, you got to come in and help me with this puppet. So one person did the arm, and one did the other arm, and then a couple of people did the feet. And my mom made me a big jersey, Red Pride 86. That would fit this giant thing. And then I did like mechanisms inside that made the eyes roll all around and the mouth move, and there was a sleeve for the tongue, and then there was another button I could push and the eyebrows would go up and down.
Okay, hold on just a second.
Yeah.
How did you know how to build mechs? Did you just make it up?
I did. I had no idea. Just from TV and watching, special effects things, and there weren't too many out there.
No,
but I just
think that there
figured
were.
it out. I figured out that if I sort of held, I don't know how I came up with that pin. I came up with a dowel that went across, and then another dowel that kind of wedged onto that. Maybe it was just from tearing things apart and tearing toys apart and figuring out how they work. Uh-huh. I would do that with stuffed animals too. I'd make patterns. I would tear apart stuffed bears, and then there's the pattern. I would trace it, and then I would sew my own, and I would give them to potential girlfriends in high school.
So you're completely self-taught with all of your puppet making, or in your career, have you ever had somebody kind of come along, or have you sought other instruction from other people as you've gone on in years, or are you completely self-taught?
Mostly completely. I figured out I made every mistake. I sewed foam together to begin with. I took a big needle and yarn and sewed it together.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just hard to do. and there's no fumes. That's the good side.
Yep.
But, all those glues that you would see in Life magazine had a great Muppets article in it, and inside you saw Miss Piggy's body, not covered with, fabric or costume. You saw the foam and the pattern, and I was like, it blew my mind. Look at all those darts and pieces and things that are pieced together. I would look at I'd get a magnifying glass and try to read the labels in the photo of the glue and what they were using. I was trying to piece this puzzle together. How do I do this? Because the only shop I had to buy stuff was this Danner's 5 and Dime. And it was a tiny little section on the wall of just little pieces of fur and styrofoam balls. And
the little googly eyeballs.
Yeah, and I didn't want any of those things.
No, you wanted better, bigger. You wanted more fur. Give me 2-3 yards of it.
Right. But yeah, and all those photos, people, I remember doing that Shaboom song in elementary school, and one of the ladies, one of the moms cried because she knew that that's what I was going to do. And I just had this sort of, a cheerleading squad behind me to do this, people who just thought, he's going somewhere with this, Guidance counselors didn't know what to do with me. I would say, hey, they say, what do you want to do? There's all kinds of opportunities out there. Oh, well, I want to be a puppeteer. Oh, well, good luck. Can't help you there.
I can't help you. That brings me to the question of college. Where do you go then? I mean, at that time, were there puppetry programs?
I had a real quandary. I'd sort of put together my own program. I said, what do Muppets do? They dance. So I better learn to dance. So I was in the show choir in school. They sing. So I took lessons to sing. Kermit plays the banjo. I better learn the banjo. So I took banjo, and then I love bass guitar, and I ended up playing that in jazz band. And I loved music, and I just would pick up anything and kind of play along with it. But then I seriously took lessons on a few things. Never piano, but I love faking piano. So I did my own program.
But this is your own program that you came up with during high school.
Yeah, and elementary school. Just all these. I'm going to do this, and if I'm going to do it, I better be ready. You know.
Right. So you've taught yourself all these things, but now what do you do when it comes time to go to college?
Well, I got pretty good at singing, and my choir director wanted me to follow in his footsteps and go to Butler University. So he set me up with an audition for a scholarship, and I got it. And then I got into we went to a show choir camp at ISU, and I got a half scholarship there too for singing. So I was just going to do my puppet thing. You know, after high school, I'd gotten a job at the Indianapolis Union Station. Actually, while I was still in high school, I got this job and had to get a doctor's note to go to the opening of the thing. But I was a singer, dancer, and then I played the banjo and did puppetry and put a hat out, you know, and it's sort of like a big
quadruple threat.
I was. They just said, "Hey, let this guy go. Have him do anything he wants." So I would just show up and clock in and do whatever I wanted to do, and they were fine with that.
Do you remember your show? Do you remember what you used to do?
Well, they had a license that I could do anything I wanted. So I said, well, I'm just going to do Muppet songs. So I just had a boombox, and I put a medley together of big band music, and I sort of had a routine with a puppet that I called him String Bean, and he attached to my feet, and I had arms and with rods, and they're kind of like the dance monsters on Sesame Street, like that, you know. And I'd seen it done before, so I wasn't like making anything up new, but I'd never seen anybody do everything on their own. And I kind of came up with this cross pattern with my hands, where the middle rod with the head went through. It was almost like a grip for golf. You would hold this here, and then you had your thumb and your index fingers together to do the arm rods on the side. So I would rock them. You could do that. You could shake. You could hold on to, two of them, an arm and the head, and then do like a gesture with the other hand, and then get back into it, and then all the steps I knew with the feet. So I did, a whole routine to this medley, and then I would do Mana and Rainbow Connection. So I probably did that over the 3 or 4 years that I was there, 1,000 or so times. I mean, really? Literally every day.
Every day. You were out there, and did you make good money?
I did, but there's so many stories about just what happened to people giving me money. What happened with that? There were drunk crowds throwing money at me for fun. Gosh. I had stalkers that would come, that would just show up and like stand there and watch me.
And it's just you completely, that you don't have like anybody there helping you at the time.
No, just me. And I would put out a hat, and I'd make like $30 a hat for like a 10-minute show. It was great. So much so that, when I was doing this in between singing and dancing upstairs, we would do the Can't Stop Dancing number and the country music number and the Beatles medley. And these were like professional dancers, singers and dancers. We were doing it to a track, but the solos were real, and we sang for real, but there was always that backup track behind us. And we were on these like tiles. It was weird, like a really hard floor. And there was one part where it was the Can't Stop Dancing number. I could do a split jump. So they had me dive off the top platform, do a split jump in the air, and land on the bottom. That was like my trick. And landing on those tiles was killer.
Oh, yeah.
It was hurt.
No dance floor or anything for you to land on, just the tile floor.
Yeah, it was like brick tile.
That's not good.
No.
How are your knees now?
I'm okay, surprisingly. I'm really lucky physically that I haven't destroyed my body through the years. All the things that I've done,
yeah,
too, are the things you see me do on the set.
I know. So you now have to go to college.
Yes.
So what do you decide to do?
I had to tell everybody that I didn't want to take those scholarships and follow my heart and do puppetry, and it didn't go over that well.
No, when people are trying to give you money to come to their school, and you're like, nah, I don't think so.
Right? Everybody's just go. You're naive. Just go and do it and get it out of the way. You know, like I just feel like the reason I started singing was to be a better puppeteer. It's the only reason I did it. It wasn't because I'm going to be a singer. You know, it wasn't that at all. And so I just. I didn't want to go off on some tangent and then go, but I wanted to do that. And then see everything happen, through time. Now I could have worked on that. That was supposed to be me. Okay, let's start class. And I'm in teaching class somewhere, singing in high school.
You don't want to do that. So then what does that mean for you? What do you end up deciding to do?
Well, what was interesting, I did go to college, but I went to a state-funded college because my dad wasn't so excited about me getting these scholarships, because even though, I got a half scholarship for both colleges, it still was a lot of money I was going to have to pay. And he was a wounded veteran, so not in wartime, but a tank rolled over his leg in the mud, so it didn't crush his leg, but he always had knee problems after that, and he was done. They say, okay, send him home. But he had a discount to any state-funded college. So I went to IUPUI. People say ooey pooey.
Ooey pooey. The Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis.
That's it, yes.
What is it? Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think you got it right first. It's Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis.
At Indianapolis.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just downtown Indianapolis. It's right next to the Union Station. So I would, I continued working, and I would just do classes. But all I took were theater classes. I never went to finish it all. I never finished my freshman year, and I was there for 3 years. I just took.
You were out working and doing the thing that you loved.
The same theory. Yeah, I wasn't trying to get a degree so I can get on with a career. I already had my career. I just wanted to, what can I glean from this, so I took, acting and set building.
So you took some classes at Ooey Pooey.
That's right. And Dr. Dorothy Webb sort of took me under her wing in the children's theater department. And there was another writer, a children's playwright, Orrin Harris, who had written a bunch of plays, and this one was that I got the lead in was Huck Finn's Story. And it was a point where I had actually, while I was taking classes in college, I had gone to New York and had auditioned for the Muppets. This was around '87, and I'd done a couple of workshops. Never met Jim Henson at that point. Hadn't met him at that point. But when I got that role as Huck Finn and Huck Finn's Story with the playwright that was there, in town, and I get the lead role, they called from the Muppets and said, Jim Henson's going to be doing a workshop, and can you come for this one? And I couldn't do it. I had to make a choice. And that was the only time I didn't follow my heart. I should have said, no, I have to go and meet Jim Henson and do this workshop. But instead, I felt bad because, there's a lot of pressure put on me at that point. Well, John, if you don't stay here and you're not here for the beginning of the workshops for the show, you probably won't be the lead. And it was important, I think, to do that. It was like a 45-minute monologue, basically.
And keep your commitment. What you were going to do.
Yeah.
But I want to go back just for a minute, because you said you'd already auditioned for Muppets. You'd already been in contact with them, and you'd done a couple of workshops?
I had. Yeah. Well, my uncle, Paul E. Kennedy, passed away recently, but he was art director for Dover Publishing in New York. He had taken the trek from Indiana, French Lick, to New York. His car broke down in the Lincoln Tunnel, and classic
Happens
story.
To everybody,
starving artist, and he met his wife there, and
in the Lincoln Tunnel.
No, just in New York. Yeah, he the story I heard from my parents was that he was he was a starving artist, and she was a waitress, and she would give him leftover pancakes to eat. So that's how they met. But he actually brought me to the door of 225 East 67th Street, because he's a very artistic guy. He had gone to IU, and he was an amazing painter. I mean, this guy built harpsichords from scratch and sells them to orchestras around the world. Yeah,
that's what he does in addition to working in publishing.
Yeah, because I would visit him. That first workshop he took me to, then he let me go into his workshop that he had rented a space downtown. I don't know, Greenwich Village, I think, because that's where he lived at that time. And and Dover Publishing was in that area too, where he was the art director for 30 years. And so he had his little basement workshop for all his harpsichords, and he would, he just loved making these things, and he'd paint murals on them that were, amazing. Just an incredibly talented guy, So I felt, I could probably do these things too someday. This is not out of reach, Okay, if he can do it, I can do it. And maybe
it sounds like you come from a very creative family. It sounds like.
Yeah. My mom loved music. My dad loved musicals. Even though he was really into sports and hunting, and that's what he wanted me to do. He loved to sing Brigadoon on a Sunday morning. It's like the house was always full of music. Our record player was always going. In the weekends. So, during the week, that's
that's sports time.
It's sports time, in the evenings or in the afternoons on the weekend, and that'd be like I'd listen to him singing and we'd sing along, and then it was like, time for a game. Okay, I'll go back to my puppets now.
All right, so your uncle takes you to the door.
He does.
To 225 East 67th Street. Is that right?
Street, yeah.
And that's the carriage house.
Yeah.
And they're doing a workshop. This is the first one, I'm assuming, right? This is the first one that you went to?
Well, the first one, yeah. And that was Jane Henson. Because right after high school, I sent I was going to tell you. You'd asked me who had helped me with any classes or anything. There was only one class I ever took, and it was with Verna Finley, who made the puppet Peanut. You know that character, the Jeff Dunham ventriloquist? He has a character named Peanut, and she made the original one for him. She was a legend in ventriloquist building. And so right after high school, and working at Union Station, I sent I sent a letter to Verna and to Muppets at the same time with photos of my puppets from the time I was 3 up, and I got a letter back from both of them, from Jane Henson, who sent me a letter and said, if you can get here, you definitely can come to a workshop, so then I called my uncle, and that's how I got to that door. And Verna Finley sent me a letter back saying, I'd love to teach you how to build puppets, please come to my house. And so I flew to Punta Gorda, Florida, where she lived, and she just let me stay at her house for 4 days and build a puppet for free, and she fed me, and she gave me all her patterns, and she was just the nicest lady. And I met her family, and they took me out to eat, and she was kind of excited that I was this young puppet builder who wanted to learn, and so she taught me how to do the patterning and how to use the glue, the stinky glues. And, like, one of the first things I saw her do was she would make the teeth out of just white foam, like that thin, it's a really thin sheet foam you could buy. It's like an 1/8 of an inch thick, and she would soak it in white paint, and then she would just put it out in the Florida sun and just kind of bake it. And it would come back, and it was real durable teeth, and then she would glue those in, and she had a really cool sewing machine, and I just soaked everything up that she was doing, and I made this puppet head that I still have, and it had a mechanism in it too, that the eyebrows would go up and down with a coat hanger wire and a thimble sewed to it. And so I've showed people how to do that as well. It's like, oh, that's really, neat, and I built it, and she'd showed me how. But so that's really the only class I took, and it's just amazing how nice people were to me. Just someone who's a kid who obviously wanted to do this for a living and was serious about it, and they weren't going to waste their time. Like I wouldn't just come to Florida and go, "Where's the pool?"
But I also think she recognized that being a puppet builder in general, being an artist like that, is rare. There's not a lot of them out there. It probably lifted her spirits, and she wanted to pass on what she knew to you.
Well, she was super nice, so I owe her a debt of gratitude for that, for being welcoming me in like that,
Yeah.
And I think you say the passion. I think part of my passion for all of it is for puppetry, in general, is that you can do it's such an eclectic art form. You can do music, you can all these things that I felt like, I passed up maybe, to do as a career. Any one of those things could be a career, but in puppetry, it's all part of the same thing. And
it's all of them. Yeah.
And all those things that I learned, I didn't know how to juggle. And one summer in high school, I said, I'm going to learn how to juggle. I might use that sometime. And I just went out in the backyard and I'm gonna get some sun and I'm gonna learn. And I just I picked them up forever. And it's like all days and days till I got it. And finally, once you get it, you'll always remember that. And I've used that in puppetry as well, like the Swedish chef's hands. I've juggled chalk eggs before, and Elmo. One of the first thing I ever did on Sesame Street was in LA while we were doing dinosaurs. Kevin said, "Hey, come on and help me with this Elmo thing." Well, I think it was me and Julianne Busher. We came, and it was Elmo Imagination music video, and it called for juggling, and I got to juggle for Elmo. We did it, kind of did his fake, sort of his hands would bobble up and down at the bottom of frame, and then I just over my head had the balls up high, and then just into frame, and I was juggling like
That's
that.
Not easy to juggle that way.
No, it's not intuitive at all.
No.
So, and that's what I had to do with the chalk eggs too, is hold over my head and then sort of up and over just enough to get it to the other hand, and then just get enough juggle in there for a take,
Hold on, John. I hate to interrupt you, but it is time for a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Sesame Street Muppet Performer Peter Lentz. You may remember me from characters like Todd the Weasel, Michigan J. Flibbenflobber, and Little Ping Pong Paddle on Sesame Street. Oh, and also Ernie. When people ask me, how do you memorize all those lines? I just smile and say, I don't. I double stick them. Then, of course, they'll say in a confused way, double stick them? What's that mean? My response is a confident, it's tape that's sticky on both sides, and I use that to stick my script to the monitor. The person will look at me a little sideways and maybe a little bit judgy and say, are you being paid to endorse double stick tape? I'll smile knowingly and look deeply into their soul and say, no. How I wish I was being paid to endorse double stick tape. That'd set me up for weeks. I could buy all the milk I wanted and just let it go bad. They'll take a few steps back because I'm so close to their face, and they'll say, are you okay? You seem a bit off. To which I'll reply, I'm a bit off. You accuse me of memorizing my lines, and I'm a bit off? Well, don't that beat all? Don't that beat all? Then they'll turn their back and start to run away from me, but I'm quick like a teapot. I'll catch them and pin them to the ground and say, ha ha, caught you. The name's Peter Lentz, and I'm the fastest puppeteer in the land. They'll stagger to their feet, brush themselves off, and walk away shaking their head, but we both know who won this battle of wits. Double stick tape. That's who.
This has been a paid endorsement.
Milk money!
That's right. Today's episode of Below the Frame is brought to you by Double Stick Tape. That is undoubtedly my son, Jack. Come in, Jack.
Hey, Dad. How'd you know it was me?
It's always you, Jack. We run the ad, then I thank them for being a sponsor, then you knock, and you come in here and you give me a hard time.
Wow, you really got me figured out.
Did you need something, Jack?
Oh, I was just curious what your little fake ad was about today.
Double Stick Tape.
You didn't add about tape? Is that what this podcast has come to? Look, you need real sponsors, Matt.
You can call me Dad. Jack, what do you mean? I can't get real sponsors.
Yes, you can.
Like what?
Beanball.
Beanball? You mean the app that you created?
Yes, just think about it.
Just to bring everybody up to speed, Jack actually did create an app called Beanball. It's a baseball game.
Well, actually, it's more than just a baseball game. Beanball is... Hang on. Come in.
Jack, did you mention that Beanball is a game?
Yeah, I was about to, but you...
No worries. I'll take it from here. Hello, listeners. It's me, Devin Milberg, co-creator of the very real app Beanball and best friend of Jack Vogel. Beanball is a game of strategy and conquest seen through the lens of the great American pastime, baseball. Play ball.
And he's gone.
Jack, did you even know that Devin was here?
No, but there you go. A real honest-to-goodness ad.
Well, thank you, Jack. Hey, wait a second. Aren't you forgetting something?
What's that?
Well, since it's a real ad and it's on my podcast, you really should be paying for the ad time, don't you think? And he's gone. Okay, well, I'd like to thank Beanball for being a sponsor of Below the Frame. Yes, it's a real app. We are back with John Kennedy. What happened after you said no to that workshop that Jim was going to be at?
Well, I was still on the list. At that time they were doing a lot of workshops, and I don't know if they knew they might be coming to Florida, and they were just looking for people, but they weren't definitely auditions, but like every few months they would do another workshop,
What year was this approximately?
This was I started calling them in 86, I think, and it was 87, 88, 89, those years.
So it was around the time, the later part was around the time of the original Disney deal.
Right. And that, they gave me no indication that was going to happen, even though I was talking to the Puppeteer coordinator, a lot for the, what dates the workshops were and that sort of thing. I was in this sort of group of people that they were considering to do right hands in the future. And they told me that at some point they said, if we would love to, possibly use you in something, you'd be, right-handing or assisting, but we can't fly you in. You would need to be living somewhere that we are working. And so I just had that dilemma, and I didn't know, well, I can't move to New York. I don't have a job. I don't have any money. Everything was going into school and building puppets, and I'd had some jobs at the Indianapolis Repertory Theater doing big puppets, and I met Brad Williams, who has passed away as well, but he was a puppet builder for the Eugene O'Neill Center, and that was a big deal because he knew Muppet people, and that blew my mind that I even was, working with someone that worked with Muppet people. And he was super nice, and he took me under his wing. Another person that just like, hey, come in and you'll be my assistant, and help me revamp these puppets. And I became the lead in the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra's Yuletide celebration, which I think still continues to this day. But it started back in '87, I think. And I played Scrooge. I was in this giant puppet costume that Brad built. So I'm sorry I keep getting off track here.
No, that's totally fine, because these are all the things that happen to us in our lives, and they all, it's not like it just goes straight to where you want to be. There are all these little side roads and little, But
at any rate, I was trying to get to back to New York to another workshop, and I knew if I was somewhere where they were working, that this would be, my goal to now I've done all this. I've gone there. They're interested in working with me. Now I just have to move somewhere they're working.
So where did you move? You didn't move to New York.
Well, it was the most amazing thing happened. It was fate. You couldn't believe, you couldn't even write this stuff, It was, I found out in the paper that, Disney's buying the Muppets, and they're moving to Florida. And I went, Florida? I like Florida. I'd gone to vacation there in Disney World, and I could go there. They might need me there. It was just a moment of excitement when I saw it. Just like, this is it. This is the answer.
And you knew that was what you had to do.
I have to go to Florida. Yeah. And so I called up my contact at Henson, and I said, hey, if I move to Florida, do you think you could use me? And they said, well, there might be a good chance of it.
Right.
They wouldn't say yes or no.
Of course not.
They said, no, I just got to get to Florida. Well, if you were there, it would be, better, So they were kind of nudging me like, yeah, that might be a good idea.
If you found yourself in Florida, that would be good.
Yeah,
maybe,
exactly.
for you.
Right. So I hung up with them going, I just got to get to Florida. How do I do it? I went, Disney World. Well, they're at Disney World. What if I call Disney World? So I just called the 1-800 number and said, hey, you got any jobs? And I thought I'd just, sweep streets or something. I didn't know what I'd do.
Well, you didn't say, like, I can dance, I can play the banjo, I can sing, I can...
No, I didn't say any of that.
You didn't list all those things? You just said any job.
I just said, well, I said, do you have anything in, like, characters? I just, like, made up something. And they went, oh, you mean costume characters? I went, yeah, costume characters, sure. They had that. And they said, well, where'd you say you're calling from? Indiana, Indianapolis area. Oh, in 2 weeks, we're having auditions for costume characters, people in suits, basically, in Indianapolis. And I was like, what is this? Really? Well, sign me up. I'm going to go. And and I knew this thing was happening, and I was excited about it because I'll see if I get this job. And then because they would relocate you to Florida. But that's it. I'll get the job. And I didn't know what the job was. Just costume characters. So, and then my dad, reading the paper, he said, hey, here's this Here Come the Muppet Show thing. They're having auditions in Indianapolis. So this is it. This was meant to be. So you just had to show up and do a funky little dance. And if you had coordination and they liked you, I guess maybe would fit in the height range of a character, you'd get the job. And I aced it because I was dancing, professionally, down the street.
Every day.
Every day. So it was no problem getting the job. And, I talked about, I'm like, hey, the Muppets and you might meet them. I don't know. They, I was just saying, well, you think I could, see some of the Muppets? Like, yeah, you might be able to. We'll see. We'll get you down there first.
Yeah.
So they relocated me. They gave me money to drive down, and I left on April 7th, 1990. And I went 2 days. I stopped to Atlanta and then went on. I was building a puppet along the way, too.
Not naturally.
I had in my suitcase Sweet Tomato the Clown. I'm making a Sweet Tomato clown puppet for a performer.
This does not surprise me at all.
So I'm still doing it today. As soon as we're done here,
I'm sure you got to go build a puppet.
4 puppets to finish today.
Of course. Yeah.
In some way, not from scratch, but yeah.
I'm sure that's right. So you move to Orlando. You are there to be a character in the Here Come the Muppets show. Can you give me just like a nutshell of what that show was?
It was costume characters of the Muppet characters, and it was kind of like Everything Goes Haywire. It was 8 shows, 5 casts doing 8 shows a day. So
5 casts doing 8 shows a day.
40 shows they did every day.
40 shows
40
a day.
Shows? Is that 40 shows?
8,
yeah.
8 and 5. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how many shows were done. I would do 8 shows. I was one of 5 casts.
And what did you get to do?
I got to do Dr. Teeth. And I think they had seen, that was in the height range for that character. So Dr. Teeth would come out with the band midway through I was in a monorail that they had, duplicated that would come and crash onto the set. It would come through the curtain and smoke, and it was like the monorail went off the track and landed on the stage.
Where was this in the park?
The Disney MGM Studios.
Was it near where the 3D movie was eventually?
It was in
would
that
be?
area, yeah. And that was as I understand, it was supposed to be a whole area of Muppets, and I think they had planned to either move that show or do another show in the new Muppet Land. That's what I'd heard, but that never happened. As the day that this show was to be approved by Jim Henson, he passed away. So, which was the world was sad, and I was sad because I did get to meet him. And I did work with him just a couple weeks earlier.
And this was on the Muppets Go to Disney World.
It was, I showed up and saw that happening. I didn't meet him that day. I saw him because in that first workshop with Jane Henson, Kevin Clash was there. So he had been watching me as well, like as a potential performer. And I'd stayed, and he had done the second workshop I did in New York. And, But he was there when I first showed up April 9th, and they were doing Muppets at Walt Disney World, and Kevin said, "Finally, you're here." Like, what do you mean, finally? Nobody said, come down
here.
That's right. I made this on my own.
Right.
This was my decision to come down here, and in hopes of working, and now I'm letting everybody down because I didn't get here sooner.
Right. Boy. Well, what did you see? What did you see when you were watching that production?
Oh, it was amazing. It was as the Camille Bonoro was the other performer in that second workshop I went to, and so before I went to on April 9th, before I went to any of my the classes they teach you, like the Disney University and all that you have to go through before you ever work at Disney World, I called up my contact there and said, "Hey, I heard the Muppets are shooting something," because someone had said so. I forget how I knew it, but they said, "Oh yeah, they're shooting they're in Bungalow 1 at Disney MGM Studios, and they're shooting on stage 1." And I said, "Well, could I go in tomorrow morning and see some of the shooting?" "Oh, sure, no problem." It was like the security was really, lax at that time. They put my name in at the gate. But now if you go there's, all this giant security stuff. If you move your
retinal
vehicle,
scan,
all that kind of stuff. But back then it was just a guy in a little box, and you'd go up and is my name on there? Oh yeah.
I'm assuming it's Charles Grodin.
Yes, exactly. I didn't see him. I think all that filming had already taken place, and if I had come 2 weeks earlier, I might have worked on all that stuff, and that still bugs me today. But nobody said anything. Oh, well, I take that back, because they did call the house, and they asked my mom if I could come out sooner, and she forgot to tell me.
Oh.
So that's why Kevin said you finally got here. But she didn't tell me. Oh, if he could come down here sooner, we could use him on this thing, and she forgot to tell me that. So I waited for 2 weeks before my date to go down there, and then just happened to show up on the set, and they were all like, "There you are."
It's pretty cool that you got to see that show being shot.
Oh, the neatest moment. Walking Camille, I saw her in the hallway, like the bathrooms over there, and drinking fountains, and she was there and goes, "Oh, John, I recognize you from the work." She recognized me. I was like, she said, "Oh, it's so great that you're here. Come on in." And she opens the double doors, and there's big swamp number with all the frogs and all the Muppet performers. And it's just like, I made it. This is amazing. And there's Jim Henson in the corner working on something. Oh, he must be writing a script or something. And I went over, and he was doing a crossword puzzle. That was his important thing. And Dave Goles was there, and Jerry Nelson came by, and I remember he had Robin tied onto his belt loop, just dangling there. And he wasn't holding it. It was just like he stuck the rod through his belt loop, and it was just hanging as he walked by with a drink or something, coffee or whatever he was at. I was just like, I'm here. I made it. And And I watched, as the big number, and Kevin had this song called Knee Deep that he was singing the low bass frog voice. And, just a amazing moment, to just feel like I made it, I'm here. And then it was like, now what? Do I actually get to work? And the thing that I did get to work on, it wasn't with a bunch of other performers. Dave Redman was there, and he was an extra performer on it that time, assistant. And he had done characters, I think, on Sesame Street and stuff. But on this particular thing, it was a commercial for the show that I was in, the Here Come the Muppet Show. And I was in Dr. Teeth in the costume. And the first thing I did that morning, it was 2-day shoot for the commercial. I got to meet Jim Henson, shook my hand, and he said, "You'll be perfect for this, first scene." And then the director came over and he's like, "You'll be perfect for this first scene." And the producer came over, "You'll be perfect for this first scene." Like, what am I doing? And they put me in this ice cream cart. It was a tiny, because I was a small, I was a dancer, pretty skinny and short, and I could get into this thing on the front of a bike. And I was in there for a couple hours and cut all my fingers getting in because it was like raw sheet metal in there, and it was freezing because I took the dry ice out. It was a working, bicycle ice cream cart. And then,
but you were perfect for that first scene.
I was perfect, and I got to do Dr. Teeth in the ice cream cart with all the other Muppets tied on, and the guy on the bike would go through and then hit a fire hydrant, which would spray a bunch of dancers, and it was all on New York Street. It was this cool scene. I never made into the commercial, that scene, but we did a lot of shooting, and I got to perform. I even got to do Kermit's right hand, and at the second day, I think everyone had left, and it was just me and David and Jim. And he started to leave, and the producer said, "Where are you going? You can't go anywhere. You got one more scene to do with Kermit." And he said, "Well, let Kennedy do it. I'm getting out of here." And he had to go do Arsenio Hall show the next day, I think. So he flew to L.A. So that was, I think, the last thing he did, And this was like the last couple of days of April, and he died on May 16th. So, it was... and I did. I got to put Kermit on, and I tried to do the scene, and I'm like, this puppet is so big on my hand. When I met Jim Henson, I realized this guy has big hands.
Yes. Yeah.
So he could fill out that face, but it was like, oh, you can't. I don't know what you do.
It's big. It's a big puppet.
Yeah. I think it might have been tailored in a little through the years, but
it could have been.
But at that time, it was just like put my hand in a paper bag.
So let me ask you this: you're working at Disney World. You're doing the Here Come the Muppets show. Then Jim Henson passes away.
Yeah.
So. And the deal goes away, really, from the Disney Muppets deal kind of goes away. What do you think then, and what do you do?
Well, if you imagine, since the age of 3 and the pursuit of this career and getting to work with my idol and being there with Jim Henson and getting to put my hand inside of Kermit, I mean, I cried on the way home. It was just the most emotional thing for me that this happened, and he said, send a tape. So I'd sent a tape, and he got the tape, and I got a letter after he died that he had seen it, and I was on file, but I never knew what he thought. I never, I was waiting to see him that day. It was just like the most devastating thing to not know what your hero thought of you, but know that he was, I was just right there. I had done it, It was just this weird moment, because I felt like I can't give it up now, but it was this overwhelming feeling of I've done all this and I've made it, and now it's all for nothing, and now I'm in a sweaty suit for the rest of my life.
But that's not what happened. That is not what happened.
No, it's not, because I had met this really cool guy named Joey Mazzarino on my second workshop, and we stayed in touch. And, and I had, they still wanted to do stuff in Orlando. So they did do a workshop in Orlando to find people. And I met Peter Lintz at that time. He came in from Georgia for that workshop, but it was after Jim passed away. And, Jim was supposed to teach us in the characters, the costumes that, how to perform the characters a little bit. And he had done videos that we would watch there. They had a cabinet of all the videos and everything that I already knew for the life of this stuff. And everybody's like, we're going to train you how to be Muppets now. You got to learn about the Muppets. And I developed a twitch at that point. I don't know what it was. You can't tell me anything. I know everything inside and out, every character, everything that anybody did. I know this, and somebody who doesn't know this now is teaching me this.
Telling you, I'm going to teach you.
That's right.
I already know it.
And my lips started twitching. It was like an Elvis thing almost. I couldn't stop twitching. I would just, at moments, I would just go, stop it. It would just start twitching. But Jane Henson filled in and taught us all this stuff. And then so when Kevin and Steve came to do the workshop, I had worked with Steve. He had heard my Dr. Teeth voice because when Jim asked me, we've got all these things going on down here, and let me do some tape. And do you do any character voices? And I said, well, I do some of your voices. And like an idiot, I did, Fozzie Bear and Miss Me and Dr. Teeth, and I did all these voices, and Jim said nothing. He just was like dead silence in the group. This was in front of everybody. And Steve was nice. He said, well, it's a pretty good Dr. Teeth, And he remembered that. So I ended up doing the voice of Dr. Teeth for the next live show at Disney World. It was mind-blowing that would even happen, but to have be in the costume, to then play Dr. Teeth for Jim Henson and have him tell me how to, bob the head and make him laugh through the scene, and then to because I was doing the character, I would always play around and do that voice, and so people had responded well to that and thought I sounded close. And then Steve with that, and then later on, Steve, saying I could do this, you should ask John to try this, But at this point, Joey Mazzarino says, hey, we're doing this thing. Kevin says we're doing, he wants me to come out to audition for this new show called Dinosaurs, these big costume characters and stuff. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. Yeah, let's do it, And I'd spent all my money going to Florida, and now I have no money to go to L.A. So I'd borrowed money, to go to Florida. And now this is 10 months later that I finally get this call, it's a hot summer of performing in Florida. And then I think it was around New Year's Eve, because I remember being in Indiana back on a break and getting the call at my parents' house from Joey saying, you got to come to LA. Kevin says we can go out there and audition. We'll go out together and we'll audition together. We'll share expenses. It'll be awesome. Then you can come back to New York, or maybe you can come first and then see me working at Sesame Street, because he had already got in. Mm-hmm. And see me, assisting on Sesame Street, and then we'll go from New York to LA together. And he didn't end up doing it, because I think they wanted local people there, and it would mean him moving. And I think he still, he grew up in New York. He probably just wanted to stay in New York, but we would rather have had them, fly him out and put him up for the shoot. But he still was a new guy. So, it wasn't like, it was the same thing. You kind of had to be in those areas. I had to move to Florida, and then I had to move to LA.
Right. But so you got the audition.
I did.
And you decided, well, okay, by Disney World, I'm going to now move to LA.
Yeah, but I had signed a contract for a year, and if I didn't stay for a year at Disney, I had to pay back the relocation money. But the Dinosaurs producers are really nice, and they paid Disney, but it was a Disney show.
Well,
they're both Disney,
so taking it out of their same Disney pocket and putting Disney. It in.
They were going to have me pay it back. Like, I don't have any money. And at that point, so we got the show, and it started going, and it was top 5 show. And the only money I had was a Shell credit card. I had no cash. I just had a Shell credit, no another credit either. That's all I had established, a Shell, gas credit card. So I'm performing, assisting the biggest character on one of the biggest shows on network television.
And that was Baby Sinclair.
Baby Sinclair, right.
And you were assisting Kevin Clash, who was playing that character.
Right.
And you were doing the eyes, right? You're doing the eyes?
Doing the eyes, yeah.
But you're working on this character on a top 5 show.
And I'm eating
prime time.
SpaghettiOs from
and you're eating SpaghettiOs
from the Shell station, yeah. They had a little mini grocery store, and you could use the Shell card to get groceries. So that's what I was, because they didn't know it was a hit until we finished like the 6th episode, and then it aired like a mid-season replacement. And then they said, go away for 2 months, and we'll come back with some more shows. Like, oh, well, I'm not getting paid for 2 months. Like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. But the show was a hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you ended up doing 4 seasons of the show.
Yeah. 65 episodes, yeah.
Yeah. What was it like to work on that show?
It was the coolest thing. I mean, each phase just got better and better and better of everything that I did, This was Hollywood. I'm on the CBS MTM lot, and there's Roseanne, and there's Seinfeld, and there's A Different World, and this is where they shot the Muppet movie too. It was the same stages, so the history of it for Muppets, and seeing the pond where it was the Gilligan's Island Lagoon was where they did the Rainbow Connection. And
I didn't know that.
And Steve had showed me. You see that little bolt on that piece of concrete in the bottom of that pond because the water was out of it. That's where they lowered the bathysphere that Jim Henson was in to do. It's just like, this is incredible. I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
The
Must
stage,
have been pinching yourself.
I was at every moment, and to get to do those extra characters and be around the Hollywood stuff, and it just was an amazing time.
So you did Dinosaurs. It lasted 4 seasons. Somewhere in there, you got to work on Sesame Street.
Yeah, in L.A.
In L.A.
on that, and then at the wrap party, which was at this wild animal preserve called Shambhala, where there's lions, elephants, and these wild animals from Africa that are being taken care of because some of them are ill or have had
the owners have become unable to take care of them because they are big cats.
Yeah, so Tippi Hedren owns this
I've been
nature
there.
preserve. Oh, have you?
Yeah.
It's really neat, and we sang Lion Sleeps Tonight in the dark around a campfire, and the lions are roaring around us. It was the neatest thing.
Wow.
And that night, Kevin said, hey, I could probably use you if you move to New York, I could probably use you there. The same thing again. I got to move to New York.
Okay. So you moved to New York.
I didn't do it right at first. So like, come on. And at that point, I was I still had ties in Florida because my parents moved there after I moved there, and then I moved to LA, so I felt bad. My sister moved there, and then my parents moved there because they thought, oh, we're all moving to Florida now. And then, oh, no, I'm going to LA. See you later. So I went back and rented an apartment, and I'd gotten a job with Ed McMahon at that time. He was looking to do some pilots of kids shows, and got approached to build puppets for that. And I met him, and it was a really funny story of meeting Ed McMahon. I went up to the guy that contacted me to do it. He'd worked on the Mickey Mouse Club show, and so that's how he met Ed, because they were doing Star Search there, and the producers and everything. So he had gotten approached to create this show, and they needed a puppet builder, and so they contacted me. And now I'm showing up to a meeting at the Contemporary Resort at the Suites, up there where I think Ed had a timeshare up there or something. So we're going up there, and my friend Sam, he's the one who hired me, and he brought me in, and we knocked, and the butler opened the door, and we came in, and I'm hearing a familiar voice, and I come around the corner, and in this little mini kitchen in this suite. Ed McMahon turns around with he's got an apron on, and he's got a pan, and he says, "Hey, John, would you like some fat-free brownies?" Just that image. And his wife was there and his daughter, and we talked about puppets, and I showed photos of stuff. And this was before I'd built them, of course. He was vetting me to be a part of his group. And we talked about the production we were going to do. And then he said, "Well, I have something I want to show you. If you want to just come into my bedroom." He said, I have a videotape I want to show you.
Oh boy.
So he came in, I went in there, and I sat down next to him. "Just sit right here on the bed right here." And I sat down, and he put in this tape, and he goes, "I wanted to show you when Kermit the Frog was on the Tonight Show." And so I watched Kermit on the Tonight Show, and Ed McMahon, of course, is he's next to Kermit. And he said, "I love this part. Watch this right here." And we're watching Kermit, watching the Tonight Show together on the edge of the bed. It was a moment.
Yeah. It was and did you end up building the puppets for Ed?
I did. We shot a pilot. Yeah, we did.
I think he was trying to connect with you and just say, like, "Look,
so.
You know what? I appreciate what you do."
He didn't send everybody away. It wasn't like totally weird, but it was
a little weird.
It was a little weird.
It was a little weird.
And I felt really privileged that he would want to show me that, and
It's
connect
pretty cool.
it. Yeah, it was a cool meeting, and he said, "John, you're the man. You're the man for the job. You're hired." So it worked out good, and we had shrimp cocktails and celebrated. And the pilot, it didn't do anything. I guess Ed reading stories to kids, it didn't come across or something. I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Didn't catch on.
No, but it was really neat. It was a neat project to work on and to be a part of that. And I got to hire puppeteers, and it was a cool thing. And Ed was really nice, and I'm glad I got to meet him.
That's cool that you got to spend some time with him and do something creative with
Exactly.
Ed.
Yeah.
Did you go back to Disney World? Did you go back to Disney World and work there, or did you?
I did a couple of days because I could keep my status. I could keep my pass to get in as a part-time employee, which meant I could go to Disney World every day for free.
What's wrong with that?
That's what I did. Like for a whole year, I would go to Disney World every day and have lunch, and I just had a blast.
So what's the next?
I did a couple of local kid shows in Orlando and put a reel together again, just so because I'd called Brian Henson. He said, "Yeah, if you send me a tape, I'll know more of how to cast you or whatever." So I had done that, and I just finally went up and stayed with my uncle again, and he was in New City, New York at that time, upstate New York. So getting my first day of work at Sesame Street, I was 2 hours late because I missed the bus way out there in the country into the city. And luckily it was right before lunch. So I was filling in for Pam Arciero. I think she was giving birth at the time. So I was just, replacement to help Telly out for that day. But it was like the 25th birthday special of some kind. And
Time out, John. It's time to ask a puppeteer about not puppets.
Ask a puppeteer about not puppets.
Today we're going to ask Bill Barretta a question about not puppets. Bill, what's your favorite breakfast?
Steak and eggs.
Oh. Are you making the steak and eggs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? How do you make them? What do you do? What do you do? How do you do it?
Well, my eggs are over easy.
Yeah?
There's two of them.
Yeah? The steak?
My steak, it's a porterhouse.
Also over easy?
No, medium rare.
Medium rare. Yeah.
And I just eat it all.
Oh, man. It sounds good.
Yeah, in like 4 minutes.
Ask a puppeteer about not
Okay, now more with Sesame Street Muppet performer John Kennedy. And I have to say, John, you're known as one of the great assistants on Sesame Street.
Thank you.
Whenever I am casting something, there is a fight for you.
No.
Did you know this? Performers come up to me and they say, can I have John? I want John. I got to have John. So why are they asking for you, John? What is it that you bring to the game as an assist or right hand?
Well, I think it's maybe it's the musicality of learning the mannerisms of the characters, which is what Kevin taught me to do, just to follow him, especially on Baby Sinclair. Baby was alive when he was on set. We didn't talk about, oh, you're going to do this and then you're going to do that. I mean, I just kind of, you just jump in and know what you might be doing, and you don't ask questions and you don't get in the way, and you just do it and you make it look good. And I just aim for that. And if they say, you know, don't do that, do this, I go, okay, just do that. You know, I don't go, well, I was thinking maybe if I did this, this would be better. You know, you just, the character's alive, and I pretty much don't listen to any of that stuff. I just go that when we're rolling, that's real, you know, and if it doesn't show true, then I'm doing a bad job, or if I stand out, I'm doing a bad job. So basically, just be quiet, blend in, believe completely in the character, and make it magical.
Yeah, I like that answer. There is a fine line between not pulling focus and, you know, pulling focus. Because you don't want to just be still when you're an assistant or right hand. You don't want to just be like locked and frozen. You want to have some natural movement to it, make, you know, mirroring, making it look like it's part of the whole package, the big character. Are there any observations that you can say, don't do this?
Don't rip the puppet's arm off.
Have you done that?
I have. I totally did. Frank Oz was doing Fozzie Bear, and I was assisting him, and I had to wear these tall shoes just to do his right hand. And he would come in with Fozzie and then turn, and he kind of did a hip bump on me. And he sent me flying into some monitors and hurt me a little bit, actually. But Fozzie's arm just went bing and just came right off. And he kept going. He just went right up to the camera and did the scene like nothing was wrong. And I'm in the corner crying.
limping, trying to find the set medic.
And it just pinned his arm on. It wasn't like it was sewn on or, they have special attachments there at Muppets. You know, it's a safety pin.
Just a safety pin.
That's all it is. So they just clipped it back on and we continued.
Yeah.
Don't
Okay,
do that.
so
I almost knocked you over recently too.
Did you?
Were in Big Bird, and I don't know if you remember that. It was a special we did recently, and you said, I just kind of worked that into it. You said you got 2 seconds to get out of the glove and then get out of frame, because it was like, do you remember this? Where like
yes.
you're starting a song, it's like the vamp right before you start to sing, and so they're going to cut to the child actor, and that child actor is going to say something, and it's like 3 words, and then
that's your chance.
That's my chance to get out. I got 3 beats to get out of the hand and get out of the shot. And the first, I misjudged it the first time. I went to pull my hand out, and I started to get out of the shot before my hand came out, and I tugged you. So as you're pulling down a little bit, as I'm just getting out, I got out, but you had to like do some kind of a dip or something to make it look like you
incorporate
naturally.
It.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
So
when a man's in a bird suit, you don't want to pull down on the wing.
But usually when I get in a situation like that, people pull out their phones and start videotaping me, because I saw the tape afterwards, because I had to do a forward roll just to get out of the shot, like a dive roll like you do in stage combat.
Oh, that's right, because they were cutting wide.
Yeah, they cut
and you
back wide.
That's right.
I was standing. I fully would have been in the shot, because it's like head to toe, Big Bird. And then close up of Kid, 2, 3, head to toe shot of Big Bird, and then where did John go? Basically, so I had to pull out within 1 beat, dive in the second beat and tuck and roll in the third beat. That's pretty much what I had to do. And you said, I didn't hear you do your dive roll. But then they said, we're going to pick it up at the wide shot. You don't have to do. And I just had to. So I did it twice. They videotaped it. But and the third one, we did it and they stopped. And then they picked up on the close up and then cut wide. And so you wouldn't see the hand needed to move. I didn't need to do it. And I just kind of walked out of the frame. And you said, I didn't hear you dive those 2 times, but I heard you walk away.
Yeah, I remember that. Let's go back for a minute to Muppets Tonight.
Okay.
What did you do on that show?
Well, I was only in L.A. because we were doing a show and tell of this show called Aliens in the Family. And I was staying in the same hotel, and they just some of the other performers, and they were just starting Muppets Tonight, and we did our little thing on a soundstage adjacent to the show. And I think they had done 1 episode already of Muppets Tonight, and Kevin said, Paula Abdul's going to be on the show, and we need someone to do the boss man. And he knew I'd been doing that in New York for a bunch of events, and he said, why don't you stay? I'm going to get them to have you stay, another couple of weeks, and then you'll be on this show too. Because we had to be back for Aliens in the Family for a little while, for 2 weeks anyway. So I stayed and worked on a bunch of those shows, and did the boss man for what was it? 2 Steps Back, Opposites Attract. That song was really cool. Brian Henson did one, and I did the other. We kind of bookend the scene. They're so big, And I got my hand got nailed to a puppet. That was another
yes.
thing.
Now this is what I was wanting to hear.
Right.
So Pierce Brosnan was a guest on Muppets Tonight.
Yeah.
And you were a lobster, were you not?
I was, yeah. I was with Dave Goelz and Jerry Nelson, and we had those lobster puppets on. We come in and to the scene, and we're firing the little guns they have. So they're like the little cap guns that you could buy with the little pink rolls of gunpowder. And those were in those little guns. Yeah, you smell the gunpowder when it fires. And we were firing those things, hitting a button, I think, and pow 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 pow, and. Pierce Brosnan is in a prawn suit as James Prawn. And whatever the song was, Johnny Fiamma's singing, he's out of time, and he's firing these real metal alarm clocks at us. So we had hard hats on and firing these guns, and and they're hitting off our head. Ding, ding, ding. And he runs out of alarm clocks at some point, and he just starts swinging this heavy wooden slingshot at us, because that's what he had, a big slingshot. That's what he was firing them with. But the thing was like 2 inches thick, I think. It was like real solid wood thing. You probably needed the tension to get an alarm clock to fire at us at that speed or impact. And and when he started swinging, this lobster that I had a wig on, and I didn't know, but there were probably a dozen pins in the wig, holding the wig just straight down in. And when he hit me on the hand, top of the puppet's head, one of those pins, which are big pins, went right through my knuckle. Now, I didn't know that at first. I thought he broke my hand. I really did. Because there's a cut there. You don't see him actually. It's in the show where he's swinging, and you see his hand come down, and that's where he hits me. But I went down immediately, just the impact of it just sent my arm down, and then they cut wide and my character's just gone. So when I'm down there going, I broke my hand, and I start to move my fingers because you remember, well, if you can move your fingers, it's not broken. So I start to move it, and it feels weird, but I can move them. I go, well, maybe I didn't break them, maybe I didn't break my fingers. So I start to pull the puppet off, and I feel the tug on my knuckle with the pin, and I can't get it off, and I just kind of panic, and I go, and I rip it out, and I look at my hand, and it's bleeding a lot, actually, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, and they said, well, come with me. And I don't think Pierce Brosnan even knew that he did it. You know, it was just so fast, and somebody saw the blood, and they were like, "Come with me," and they sent me to a back room, and they kind of cleaned it up, and and I'm moving around, and goes, it still stings, but it doesn't. I can move it. I'm fine. Oh no, you need to go to the emergency room. We got a car coming now to send you, and I'm like, oh man. So I leave the set, I go to the emergency room, and the hardest thing at that point, it stopped bleeding. And it looked like maybe a bee sting, or maybe not even that. It didn't swell up at all. It was just a tiny little pin prick. It didn't get black or blue. It just looked like, what's wrong with you? I don't see anything.
Were you concerned about nerve damage or any kind of damage to your hand at that point?
Didn't feel anything wrong with it, so I don't know. I just, it just still, it hurt a little, but it whatever happened, that pin must have snaked through the cartilage or something, because I think it went all the way through. It didn't bleed on the other side, but I think it went all the way to the.
You think it went from one side of your hand through to the other side?
In the knuckle though, right next to the top of the knuckle and through into there. So it was pulling the cartilage when I was trying to get it off.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
I love that story.
But it was only hurting the skin part, because I guess you don't feel your cartilage, I don't guess, and it didn't hit a nerve, so it wasn't like my whole arm went numb or I lost any feeling or any tingling at all. It was just like I slapped my hand on the tabletop, basically, and that stings, that hurts, But
you were so lucky.
I was. That could have ruined my career right there. But the hardest part of it was having to explain what had happened to me at the emergency room. Well, I mean, I'm in a lobster puppet, and
Pierce Brosnan.
He hit me with a slingshot, and it put a pin through my. Never mind.
Is it okay?
That's right. They gave me a tetanus shot. And they felt like they had to do something, and then they took me right back, and I was in the next scene. It's like nothing happened.
You mentioned Jerry in that scene there, saying that he was one of the lobsters as well.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to jump back to Sesame Street, because over the years, Muppet performers, when they leave or they pass away, their characters live on through another performer.
Right.
And you have been given the responsibility of taking on one of Jerry's characters, Mumford, the magician.
Right.
We haven't seen him a lot, but there have been a few bits with him over the past couple of years, and he was in the special.
Right.
Tell me just a little bit about him. What's your take on Mumford?
Well, it's kind of interesting, because I don't know if you remember, I said East 67th Street. When I first showed up at Disney, it was exit 67. 67 is, I was born in 67. It's just a reoccurring number for me, and a lot goes on and on and on that I can explain. But Mumford's birthday is 6/7.
Get out of here.
Really? That's something about Mumford. Yeah. I got just these weird things happen to me. Like what? It came in one of those cereal boxes, a little tiny Mumford. It came in a cereal box, and someone gave it to me, and I opened it up, and it was like, fun fact, Mumford's birthday is June 7th. And I was like, another 6/7. How is this possible?
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about his, the vocal quality of Mumford for you.
Oh, well, he's based on another character, W.C. Fields, basically. And I had performed him before in a Halloween special. It was back when Jerry had some, problems with lungs and stuff. So he needed people to fill in for him. And I'd been doing quite a bit of that stuff. And so he said, yeah, well, he's just going to loop, you're doing this. So, but, I took it upon myself to do, an okay job with it, and thinking, no, it never would show up. But there is a shot or a scene in there where my voice is in it.
Oh,
they
really?
forgot to loop that.
They forgot to loop.
Yeah, that word or phrase or something. It happens sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's like, uh-oh. Well, I'm glad it was
Good thing you made an attempt at the voice then.
Yeah, but he was always my favorite character too as a kid. I loved magic, and his all up peanut butter sandwiches was my favorite bit. And him, getting at Grover, his assistant, and I just really was attached to that. And you had. We had done Below the Frame before, and I think the question was asked, who's your favorite Sesame Street character, current or past? And I was like, Mumford, and I think I said it 3 times during the thing. And then, like, the next week, I got the call for the audition. Like, this is really weird.
You put it out there
I did.
in the world, and then it came back to you, and now you're Mumford.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. But
That's right.
I feel very lucky to have. I would hang out with Jerry a lot in some of the my earlier days. He was there for that first commercial, and he said, "I figure I've done 300 characters." At that time, 1990. I'm sure he probably had done more than that.
I'm sure he'd done more. He had to have done more.
Yeah, he had so many great voices and so distinctive too. You wouldn't know he did that and this too. And he was just kind of a rock. He was really a funny guy too. I mean, he was. I remember doing a bit with Fozzie Bear once on just something at the Henson lot that was like an internal use thing, and or for Disney, or it was something that it wasn't going to air anywhere. But I remember doing a bit, and he said, "Oh yeah, and then do this." He just saw where I was going with it, and he would push me to be funnier. And that Robot Lincoln was one of the characters he did on Muppets Tonight, and I got to do one of the hands. I think Leslie Craw Rudolph was one hand, and I was like the other hand. It was like such a big puppet, or maybe we were bunnies. I don't know. There was it was a weird. These scenes were so bizarre sometimes. There were bunnies and Robot Lincoln, and they going haywire. But he was just so great to work with because his timing and the voices and the characters he created. So I feel really honored to even be mentioned in the same sentence with him.
He was a great guy.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever bond over music? Because you're both musical.
Yeah, in fact, Muppets Tonight, and I didn't know this. I didn't know he wrote songs. I knew he played because he would play guitar and sing at Muppet Sesame Street rap parties. So I knew that, and I knew he played with some other guys up in Cape Cod or something. And so yeah, one day it was before we were shooting. We were just at our hotel, and this was in North Carolina, just out on the deck where they had us. And I was playing Mississippi Mud on my ukulele, the sun goes down, time goes out, up against shot. Hey, Uncle Dud, and that's one of the, I think he sang that in the Muppet Show. It's on the Muppet Show album 1, I think it's on like the opening song, I think. And he was listening, and I didn't know it. And he like, bravo, after I was done, I was playing that. He was like, hey, give me that thing. And then he started to play Noah's Ark, this song that he does. It was on his album that he did in later years. And I didn't know he wrote it. I thought, oh, that's some weird, 40s song that he knows, from way back, I didn't know it was his song, but he did the whole song for me and played it, and that was so cool. And we would hang out, John Henson and Jerry Nelson and I would sometimes go, somewhere after work and hang out, and we had a lot of fun. It was. I remember having Dave Goles and Jerry Nelson. They were working in L.A. and they said, "Where's a good place to eat, John?" And so I had to go find a restaurant for them to eat at. And it was just around the corner from where I was staying, by the Beverly Center. But it was so cool. It just. What do you say? I'm hosting a dinner with Dave and Jerry.
Cool,
yeah,
right. These people that you idolized really when you were a kid.
Yeah,
and then now you're working with them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's when I think of those moments, it it blows me away. I
know.
I'm so stunned that we've gotten to work with some of those people that we so looked up to when we were kids, and then getting to work with them and call them friends.
Yeah, I know.
And it's pretty rare and a really amazing thing. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, me too. And it just, like you do that digital flip from that, seeing that video come down and on Saxon Violence, and there's those guys. I want to meet those. I want to work with those guys someday. And now I'm having dinner with them.
I know, unbelievable.
How does this happen? Dreams do come true.
They really do. In your career, favorite character?
I would say Mel the dog. It's not a Muppet character, but I sure love that. You were there too. I remember,
Jack's Big Music Show.
Yeah, Jack's Big Music Show. Just because of music, that's the only reason. Sesame Street has a lot of great music on it, but these were like it was kind of like what I would have guessed being on the actual Muppet Show would have been, and I always loved those musical numbers because they didn't have to make sense to the story or anything. It was just, let's do a wacky song, and here, you do a pig, and you do a sheep, and they would put a thing together, and it was all creative and fun and musical, and just Muppets tied to music as my favorite thing, and puppets in general tied to music, and that show in particular just focused on music, Jack's Big Music Show. And I got to play this character that I had no lines. I only said rough and not, woof or bark or anything. It was woof,
Yeah, but when you did it, it meant something very specific each time.
Rough.
And that show was created by David Rudman. Yes,
David Rudman. And he played Jack. And it was a very small set, and it was just a handful of people. And it wasn't like, big shows, you'll have a lot of network people there and a lot of voices and stuff. And it was just like, it was kind of like we were doing summer puppets at Dave's house, It was like a summer camp or something.
Yeah, I remember coming and working on that show, and I loved it. I mean, I just got to come in and guest for a couple of different shows, but it's just such a great atmosphere. And David has this wonderful manner about him when he's directing. He's just very calm. Everything's very calm, Yeah. Well, you, John, are probably the hardest working man in puppetry. You are always working on something, like I said.
I think it's you.
No, I'm not. I am a loafer. Look, you've got your company. What are the kind of projects that you work on as a work for hire?
Well, I do stuff for Universal and Disney. I'll make practice puppets, and Halloween Horror Nights. I'll do puppets for that, theme parks, and I get calls all the time for startup projects. Like I'm doing several right now, where and I do workshops as well. That was the main part of my I'd say business is doing workshops for kids. I've done cruise ships, and the Henson Foundation, I believe, has sent me all over the world to do workshops wherever there was a Henson exhibit, and so I've drawn from my books that those are all just projects. I said my mom didn't know how to make puppets, and so I had to figure it out. So those are things, and I tell those stories, how I came up with that idea.
I mean, is that why you decided to write books on how to make puppets? Is that when you were a kid, there wasn't that kind of thing out there, or at least you didn't have access to it. And there might be kids out there today who are looking to make puppets.
Well, I would go to the Plainfield Public Library like every month and just see if could there be another puppet book in there? Maybe one for me, The only one that I really could figure out things that I could do that were kind of like Muppets was Of Muppets and Men. So I could look at all those. You could see people building the puppets and making characters for the Muppet Show and like that.
But your books are a little different. They are literally step by step, and you really can make some cool stuff in those books.
Yeah, I wanted it to be accessible, for kids to, well, here's something I could make out of a sweatshirt sleeve, so I have the sweatshirt sheep,
If people want to get in touch with you about workshops or puppet building, where do they go?
Well, they can go to puppetkit.com is my website. I also have Johnny K Band, which features some of the music I've written in my album, but They can go, I guess I'm on Facebook. You could send me something there.
Puppetkit.com
Yeah.
and Johnny K Band. And this
Yeah.
is what I was going to ask next is, you're a musician. You play a lot of different instruments. Name the instruments that you play, John Kennedy.
Harmonica, bass guitar, banjo, ukulele, some regular guitar. I guess that's probably all I would say. But, I have played the drums on things and bongos and stuff like that. But I'm not really that good of a rhythm person. I get by with puppets and that's about it.
And you made this CD.
I did,
called Walk the Loop. Tell me about that kind of creative venture.
Well, my grandfather was a musician. He was a trumpet player in the big band era, the 30s and 20s. He was traveling with a band, and that's how he met my grandmother, was at a train station, at the train station hotel. She was a cigarette lady, the mint cigarettes. She was in the lobby, and that's where they met and got, I think, married like a month later. But he was a trumpet player. He was really good, and a lot of the songs that I do have a trumpet in it, or, I just, he wanted me to play the trumpet. That was the first time it was like, you're going to be a trumpet player. You're going to follow my footsteps. And I did play some, and I played the marching French horn in the marching band in high school. And that's kind of like a trumpet, it looks like a trumpet, but it's a little bigger French horn parts. But, I just love that side of my family, the musical side, and I feel like I just want to flex that part, You've made albums as well.
Sure, yeah. It's fun to be able to just create and do something different than what you do for a career sometimes.
Yeah. And I like meeting musicians and hiring them to play parts for me that I make up. I just enjoy that the best, to sit in the studio and here's the song and I wrote, here's the track, my bad version of it. Now you do
make it good.
Make it good. And they do. It's just incredible, musicians that I work with.
It's an awesome album. And you're welcome. And you made some videos for it. There's one that's called I'm Your Best Friend.
Yeah.
Gonna have a real good time. I'm your best friend, and you are mine. Peas in a pod, grapes in a vine. Oh, I am your best friend, and you are mine.
My dad was a big model train enthusiast, so it brings a lot of good feelings for me when I see the video. I just rewatched it this morning as well. It's great. It's a great, catchy song, too.
Thanks.
There's a trumpet in there.
It does, yeah. And the train, my grandfather was on the trains,
And it's also got a special guest appearance by Leslie Carrara Rudolph.
That's right.
That's really cool.
Central Station, and we danced. And nobody noticed us at all.
Nobody batted an eye.
Well, only one lady walked by, and she noticed us, came up and said, "Those are the old dances."
All right, John, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Are you ready?
Is that one of them? Oh. No.
Here we go. What's the hardest part about being a puppeteer?
Some of the positions you have to get in.
What's the easiest part?
Is when you have no lines.
What is your biggest strength as a performer?
Being able to throw a prop and hit a spot.
What's your biggest weakness?
Weakness, probably being funny all the time. Timing.
What is one of your favorite things about being a Muppet performer?
Just being in the presence of Muppets. Just being there.
So if you weren't a puppeteer, what would be your career?
I probably would be a camera guy.
Oh.
The same timings and things that you do with, I considered that, deeply at a point, if I don't do this dream thing, maybe I'll just work at a TV station and maybe there'll be the opportunity to do a puppet now and then.
Okay, there are probably some people listening that want to hear you tell them what they have to do to become a Sesame Street Muppet performer. So what would that be?
Well, they have to have a camera and a monitor to practice with, and they have to do it more than once. They have to spend a lot of time, and think that you can do it but know that it's really hard to do it.
That's good. I like that. Okay, this last one now. I mean, we have detailed a lot of things like this, what I'm going to ask you here today.
Okay.
I'm going to ask it anyway. Jerry Nelson once said to me, Sesame Street's great, but always have something that is your own that you create. Now, I usually ask, what was that for you?
Right.
Creative thing that's your own. But for you, John, you've told us so many different things that you've done, and you do it every day. So I'm going to ask you this: what is it that you haven't done yet that you want to try? That's a new thing that's all your own that you create.
Oh, well, I know. I've got a couple things. Well, one is, and it's. I got at one point. I got to do Floyd for a little while, perform one of Jerry's characters, and his bass guitar had this cool thing. You pull on a string, and the right hand, because he's a left-hand bass player, his right hand would go up and down the bass frets. So you could move that like that. Being a musical person, I really want to create this mechanism that I can pull, because I was doing this with the character. I was pulling the string at an angle and then moving the rod and doing both things at once. And I think at the O2 Arena, I was doing that as well with Janice. She had a guitar thing, and I was able to use two. She doesn't have a string, but she had two rods, and I was able to get. I do this thing that's like a air guitar thing that when I did my audition at Disney World with Steve and Kevin, I showed off the fact that I could play air guitar doing two rods in one hand. Normally you'd have an assistant that would help you do the other hand, but there was no guitar obviously in that, but I could do things with, and I'm double jointed, so that helps. I can do things with my thumb that with rods and things that are kind of crazy, and so doing that air guitar with Janice, and then doing the pull string with Floyd. So I want to build this mechanism. It's just something I'm dying to do it, and because I love every guitar solo in every song ever written, and I've committed to memory all these songs, and someday I'm just going to have fun, and I just want to do that. I want to have a puppet band, and that's really the essence of Johnny K Band. I really want to do a music video where I have my character that plays guitar, and I want to hire that person who's a really amazing, like Eddie Van Halen kind of guitar player, and have him. I want to write the song, have him play it, and then have me do the thing where the fingers are moving and it's up and down the strings, and having him strum the guitar parts and all by myself, not with an assistant, but to have that dexterity to do that. I already see it. I know how it's going to work, and I'm always tied up with other things, and I can never have time to just do that.
John, thank you so much for talking with me. It was been great spending time with you.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. That's Below the Frame. If you are on social media, follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and let us know what you think. Our show today was produced by me. Our theme song was written by Stephanie DeBruzzo and performed by the Mighty Weaklings. Our podcast artwork was created by Dave Holteen at daveholteendesign.com. Peter Linz was the performer in our Word from Our Sponsor Players ad for Double Stick Tape today. Thank you, Peter. Thanks to John Kennedy, my son Jack, and his best friend Devin for being on the show today. And thanks to you, the fans, for listening. I am Matt Vogel. We will see you next time when we go below the frame. Bye-bye.
Go, go, go.